Hi there, welcome back to Decaf-Math ASMR, and a warm welcome if you are new here. I hope that you're doing very, very well. Today, let's take a look at a particular problem. This was a requested video, and let's try to solve 4x plus 9 equals -7. And we are going to solve for our variable x. Solve for x. And the requested topic was to take a look at these linear equations and with one variable. So what makes this linear is our variable x is not raised to, like a 2 or a 5. It's just standalone. There's a little secret power of 1 because anything to the power of 1 is itself. But there's not going to be a fraction with our x and in the denominator or square root of x or anything. It's just going to be our standalone variable. And these questions are going to involve exactly 2 steps. One step is going to be either addition or subtraction, up to us to decide. And the other step is going to be, you guessed it, multiplication or division. Nice. Not necessarily in this order, but one of these two, addition or subtraction, and one of these two, multiplication or division. So, before we go through our 2-step case, this of course relies heavily on understanding the 1-step case. So if you need to take some time to go back and review this, feel free to, or let me know if you want to go into it further. I'll link all relevant videos that I can think of that we've already covered, but we'll definitely come back to this as well. But an example of a 1-step equation that involves division is something like this. Solving just 3x equals 6 without guessing and checking. So the 1 step will be to either just divide 3 on both sides, or you can think of it as moving the 3 over to the other side of the equal sign by dividing. So this would be a 1-step division kind of problem. For multiplication, it would look something like this. So to get rid of that divide by 2, to solve for x, you multiply by 2. For adding, the question might look like this. You have a -1, so to move it over, to get rid of it, you add 1 on both sides. And for subtracting, you get something like so. You have a +2, so to move it, you do the opposite. So to make sure that you can kind of work through these 4 situations, these are our 1-step situations, and then we can combine them to do our 2-step equations. So we'll cover some of the foundations of this today as well, just so that we can take our time, but in another video we can do a bunch more practice problems that involve exactly 2 steps. But we'll just run through those more directly. But I just hope that this can help us build some intuition behind it, and then this way you can explore which method is your favorite, and maybe I can answer some questions along the way. So the question is then, let's start with figuring out, well, what are we trying to do? So this is actually a question in math form. Really, if we were to read this out loud, right, we want to know what is the value of x? So 4 times what number, or just what, And when you smush a number and a letter together or a variable together in algebra, it means multiplication. 4 times what plus 9 is -7, or is equal to, or gives me -7. That's the question. 4 times what plus 9 is -7. And so you'll answer, well, that what is that what? What equals blank? You want a direct number. So how do we know that we multiply first? Why is it 4 times what plus 9? Why is it not 4 times what plus 9 first? That is because we still have to follow our order of operations. So PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. For now, we don't have to worry about parentheses or exponents. We just know that multiplication and division happens before addition and subtraction. So the 4x happens first, and then you add 9. So from here, if you want, you could guess and check. You could try something like x equals 2. And what you would do to see if that is the correct answer is you just go ahead and plug it in. So 4 times 2 first is 8. 8 plus 9 is 17. And 17 is not quite -7. Whoopsies, that's okay. So you could guess, and it might take a while, and since we don't want to be doing math homework all day, it would be a great idea to have a system, right? Maybe some kind of idea or direction so that we're not just sitting there and guessing, especially if numbers get more complicated or if there are decimals and stuff where we really can't guess. So there are multiple ways to do this. Usually in math, there's not just one set way, so don't get too attached. But I do suggest starting with this. So if you read it out loud, remember the goal is to directly say x is this. So we can kind of work backwards and think about what happens if I give you 2, you multiply it by 4, and then you add 9. To see whether that is -7. So when you want to solve for x, you kind of can go the other way around. You undo everything. So the plus 9 happened last. 4 times my number, then plus 9. So you might as well try to undo the other way, the opposite way. And in this case, you don't have to worry about exponents and parentheses, but it's one way to think about it. So you'll want to get rid of the plus 9 and then get rid of the times 4. So what do I mean by get rid of? So this is going to be the concept that we kind of talked about for the one-step cases. So we can look at this beautiful equal sign. This is my favorite because it's so simple, but it's so powerful. Why? Because no matter what is on this side, it can be as complicated as you want it to be. Or on this side, you could even have more x's or other letters too, or whatever else. You can have square roots. It can be a mess. But the minute that I have an equal sign, I am stating this equals this. The value of this is the value of this. These are the same, equal, balanced, nice, and pretty, because I say so. So whenever I see a -7, I can put in 4x plus 9. It doesn't look the same, but it is the same because of the equals. That means it's like a balance. So whatever I do to this side, I do to this side, and I keep everything equal. It's almost like if I just said -7 equals -7, duh. But if I, add 5 to this side to get -2, I have to keep it balanced, so I have to add 5 on this side, and -2 still equals -2. So That's the main idea. You can multiply, you can do whatever because they are literally the same as long as you do it correctly on both sides. So we're not just randomly going to multiply things by 2 or subtract by 5, whatever. We are going to hopefully be clever in how we choose to work with this. So our goal is then to say, well, we're looking to know what x is directly. So let's get rid of this plus 9. So if the question were x plus 9 equals -7, this would be our one-step case with subtraction, where the one step is subtraction. So if you want to refer to that. But in this case, basically, I have a plus 9. So to get rid of it, I'm going to minus 9. So I'm looking on the side with the x in this case. So I want to get rid of this. And if I do plus 9 minus 9, I get 0. And 0 is the additive identity. That just means that anything, in this case 4x, plus 0 or minus 0 is itself. Seems kind of redundant. It's nothing. It just goes away. But there is a math word for that, right? It's the additive identity. So plus 9 and minus 9 are therefore opposites because when you add them together, you get the additive identity. And that's the goal. I want to get rid of this -9. But if I minus 9 on this side, to keep it nicely balanced, I have to subtract 9 on this side as well. Okay? So when I write this out, after I subtract 9 on both sides, I get that 4x equals, because we chose the minus 9 from this side. This side just follows along after to keep things balanced. So we'll get -7, and then we have minus 9. That's essentially what happened because we chose the minus 9 from this plus 9. So if we look at this, this will be up to you whether you like to think about it as minus 9 on both sides, or it basically looks like, comparing this and this, you basically moved this plus 9 over to the other side of the equal sign and essentially changed the plus to a minus. It was a plus, so it'll be minus 9. But the sort of in-between thing that happened is actually subtracting 9 on both sides. So right now, since it's the first time we're running through this, it seems like it's kind of complicated and long-winded, but I just wanted to show you so that 1, you understand the behind the scenes, and 2, you can decide for yourself which way is faster, which way you prefer. But that is the reason why some people can kind of just do this in their heads, because they're just moving it by doing the opposite. So then we get 4x equals -7 minus 9 is -16. Be careful with the pluses and the minuses, and if you're working with negative numbers. And now we have a one-step equation that involves division. So here, again, we are going to try to get rid of the 4 times part. And because it's 4 times x, we are going to do the opposite. So we are going to divide by 4 here, by choice. And again, we have our lovely equal sign. So this side equals this side because it says so. So if I divide by 4 here, I must divide by 4 here. This is the reason we divide by 4. This follows along by this choice. So just because we have to. And why do we divide by 4? Because dividing by 4 is the opposite of multiplying by 4. And that's because 4 divided by 4 is 1. And 1 is the multiplicative identity. The additive identity is adding or subtracting by 0 gives you the original thing. But multiplying by 1 or dividing by 1 gives you the original thing as well. 1 times x is going to be x. So we have x equals -16 divided by 4. Again, it's this drawing back to the original, not the original, but once we moved the -9 over, we essentially move the 4 over to the other side of the equal sign by dividing by 4. So what was 4 times x, because it was times, when you move it across the equal sign, it becomes divide. And the behind the scenes is because we are dividing by 4 on both sides, but we chose that 4 to make it the multiplicative identity. So therefore, x equals -16 divided by 4, which is negative because the negative divided by positive is negative, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. That is our answer. Ta-da! I know it was long-winded. If we were trying to just solve this in general, we would just go ahead and do bloop, and then done. But like I said, I wanted to build some intuition behind it. And what is so nice about this and these kinds of problems is you can always go back and check your answer. So when you check, you take your -4, put it back in. So 4 times -4. If you want, you can put a little dot there for times. You don't want to be doing this anymore in algebra because that might get mixed up with x, but you can put parentheses to clarify you have a negative number and you're multiplying and not subtracting, however you like. But you plug it in to the x on here and you want to know, is that equal to -7? And so you check that and you go 4 times -4 is -16. And positive times a negative is negative. 4 times 4 is -16, or 4 times 4 is 16, so you get -16 plus 9 is indeed -7. So we got it. So x equals -4. And for these kinds of questions, there's only ever going to be one solution, if there is one, and that is it. So in general, it's not always the case where you just add or subtract first and then divide. It will really depend on the question and your preference. But let me just show you that, just as a side note, you could do this another way, theoretically. So we have our question, 4x plus 9 equals -7. And let's say you just want to keep this spicy. So you don't feel like moving it the normal way, whatever that is, but let's say you don't feel like doing that. You want to divide by 4 first because you see a 4 times. That is okay, but just be careful. The only thing you can't do is you cannot just divide by 4 here and then divide by 4 here. Sad times. Not quite. The reason is because we have the entire 4x plus 9 to work with. So if you decide to divide by 4 on both sides, carry it out through the entire thing. So you could do this, okay? But you can't just take one piece of it because you have the plus 9, poor plus 9. So when you do divide, you have to distribute this like this. You have to treat this whole thing as 1, and you distribute. So 4x divided by 4 will still be x, but you'll have a 9 over 4. And then on the other side, you'll still have a -7 over 4. So, and then you can carry on. It will give you the same answer. It's just that now you have fractions to work with, but whatever, who cares? I think this way is still easier to move the plus or minus over first in this case and then divide. But like we said, you totally can divide first. Just make sure you are carrying it through properly. So just don't go breaking math and everything will be okay. Don't forget you can always check your answer. If you get stuck on anything like this, you can let me know. But my first tip will really be first try to read out what the question is. That'll give you a sense of what actually happens to x, and then you can kind of undo that slowly. And that'll give you a hint about whether or not you're going to do multiplication or division first, or addition or subtraction first. And to determine between these, you will just use the opposite of what actually happens. So that is it, pretty much. So in the future, probably pretty soon, we'll do questions like, what happens if we have, I don't know, I'm just making one up like this, or, and this actually also requires 2 steps or follows along the lines of this. So notice that if we actually divide the 2 here and here, m still actually has a power of 1, so it's still a linear equation. We just have to clean it up a little bit. We might do something like this or something. So we'll just do more practice to get a feel for what to actually do and in what order. And again, we could practice another one where we have this situation going on. So we'll run through those probably more directly. As you get a feel for this, you'll be able to just kind of move it around in your head more, but take your time. You're doing a great job. If you're not even learning this stuff and you are asleep now, that is totally okay with me. You are probably taking a very well-deserved rest, but I will talk to you more very soon for more math. Thank you for joining me. Take care. Bye-bye.